Good evening, I'm Pinky Webb. Tonight we ask the questions, we tackle the issues, we clarify matters, and we get on point. The controversial Discaya couple reveals the congressmen allegedly involved in the flood control scandal. Among them, House Speaker Martin Romualdez. Amid intensifying corruption allegations in Congress, the Senate has undergone a major shakeup with Senator Tito Sotto back at the helm. Will the leadership of the House change too? Let's get on point with Akbayan Party List Representative Chel Diokno. Attorney, good to finally have you. Maraming salamat po sa inyong oras.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
First off, breaking news, of course, the change of leadership in the Senate. Reaction, she's out. Senator Tito Sotto now as Senate President. What do you think of the timing, or at least the change in the Senate?
Well, it wasn't totally unexpected. I think we had been hearing about some changes even some time ago. But I look forward to whatever investigations the new Senate leadership will embark on. We have to get to the bottom of what's happening, not just in the flood control, but in so many other infrastructure projects.
Flood control is really just a segment of this whole infrastructure program of the government, Attorney. In fact, they were saying, Congressman, they were saying, ang dami pa dyan yung mga cat's eye, yung mga solar lights, etc., that have possibly been overpriced.
Much to look into.
Okay. What about the House? Should there be some change in the House as well after what happened in the Senate?
You know, I belong to the minority, so I'm not exactly privy to what may happen within the majority. Again, you hear a lot of stories going around, but probably we won't really know until the days to come.
All right. Let's go to what happened. The reason I ask that too is because they say there are whispers also in the House of a possible change. But with the testimony, Congressman, of the Discaya couple, saying that some congressmen, and I think women, together with Speaker Martin Romualdez and Ako Bicol Party List Representative Chel Diokno, were recipients of about, 25, it was a little bit confusing, 25 to 30% of their contracts. First of all, as a lawyer, how do you appreciate a testimony like that?
Well, of course, any witness who testifies, you would have to really examine not just what they say, but what the possible motivations are, and even more important, what the corroborating evidence they can produce. To me, that's so important because I've been a lawyer for 36 years. Some witnesses are truthful and some witnesses aren't. Some witnesses have a personal agenda and some witnesses don't. And you have to get to the bottom of every single witness who testifies, especially someone who is incriminating other people in government.
What did you think of their testimony, though? I mean, is it something that it's pitting them versus other people? It's pitting them versus, let's say, the speaker or the other congressmen. It's pitting them against the DPWH people. How does one appreciate an accusation such as what was given by the Discaya couple this morning? In fact, it was really a surprise.
As a lawyer, you know, I don't take anyone's testimony at face value, especially a testimony that would be explosive like that. I would have to ask first, bakit kaya nila sinasabi yan? Ano kaya ang kanilang interest? At the same time, I would also examine the testimony really up close because there are things that perhaps we should be asking and which I'm prepared to ask tomorrow if they appear in the House in the morning.
So the continuation is tomorrow in the House?
Yes, in
the House hearing. Yeah, so that's the second hearing.
Second hearing.
All right, we're going to watch that too, Congressman. So you were saying very important things, corroborating evidence. You want to ask why, and what is the interest or the motive? When you saw that, were you able to watch the testimony early this morning or
Not
this
the
afternoon?
whole thing,
Yeah.
but some of it, yeah.
Okay. In general, though, what were the questions that you wanted to ask that may have not been asked by the senators in today's hearing?
Well, some of it I don't want to talk about tonight because I don't want to jump the gun for tomorrow's hearing. But
Okay.
I would want to get a fuller picture of their dealings with the government from the time they said they started, making money from their business in 2016. You have a lot of testimony that apparently relates to more recent transactions, but that's another way of testing how credible and how trustworthy they are. If how willing are they to talk about everything that that has happened since that period of time?
Was it a little bit, I know that you don't want to jump the gun and of course ask the questions tonight para hindi po nila malaman bukas. Ako na lang po magtatanong. Ang sabi po kasi nila in previous hearings that they started with local projects. And then sometime in, please correct me if I'm wrong, sometime in 2016 was when they dabbled into the flood control projects. I remember that was the question of Senator Bato de la Rosa. My question is this, sir. Why would they name legislators allegedly involved in kickbacks with a ledger as evidence just for their records that began in 2022 when they've been dealing with flood control projects, just flood control projects, since 2016?
Well, that's a lovely question. Perhaps we can ask that tomorrow.
All right. How about the right of those that were mentioned and identified? Because marami din siguro, meron na lang po, maybe is the more appropriate word would say na, sabi na nga ba, andyan talaga si Zaldico, kasama siya talaga dyan. Ayan, kaibigan ni Speaker yan, may nagsasabi na po. How can it be fair, I guess, for all parties involved? Let's say they have a motive, let's say they were telling the truth, let's say they were half telling the truth, and then paano naman po yung mga na-identify na mga congressman?
Yeah, they have a platform and they have the resources, I believe, to question these accusations and to defend themselves. Anyone who's been accused of something as grave as that really has a right to defend themselves in front of the public. Now, what will happen, what they will do, I'm sure even now they are consulting with their legal counsels and figuring out what is the most appropriate response to these accusations. You have to remember, these are, at this stage, just accusations. We haven't yet reached a stage where this will reach the assessment of a judge or even a prosecutor. So we are yet very early in this question of evidence.
What do you call it again, Congressman? The court of, it's a court of public trial. Nandun po tayo sa stage na yon ngayon.
Yes.
All right. Yung ano po ang ating mga nagiging pananaw or saloobin doon sa mga lumalabas na palitan ng mga salita. A number of the congressmen already gave statements saying, the most common words, politically motivated, hearsay, etc. When you have an accusation like this, and according to them, they only supposed to have a ledger to back it up, does that stand in court?
Depends on what the ledger contains and how that ledger was prepared. And, at the same time, I think in the interest of transparency, this is something that we have been calling for in Akbayan. It would be good if all our legislators would release their salary, because that would be the best way to refute any accusations that they have any ill-gotten wealth. Tingnan nyo, wala naman akong kinita dyan. And aside from that, this is also a suggestion I made to Secretary Dizon, that officials of our government would do well to waive their bank secrecy so that no questions about their being corrupt they couldn't be accused of being corrupt if that happens.
So two things. I heard that when you suggested to Secretary Vince Dizon to have everyone actually that would be involved to present their SAL-Ns and to waive this bank secrecy. Quick question on the SAL-N, Statement of Assets, Liabilities, and Net Worth. Even if this was made public. There are other ways to hide money that was received through illegal means.
Definitely. But it's a starting point because there you see what they have declared or what we have declared as government officials. And from there, very enterprising investigative journalists can find out a lot.
Pero doon talaga pupunta, I guess, Congressman, na syempre, pagka stricto na tayo sa SALN, pwede mong ilagay sa pinsan mo, kaibigan mo, hindi ho ba? Pwede mong dalhin yung pera kung saan-saan para it does not reflect in your statement of assets, liabilities, and net worth.
Yes, but there's so much we can do insofar as technology to test the credibility of people's statements and accusations. For example, let's talk hypothetically, okay? Not about any of the testimonies that we heard earlier. Somebody claims that they are involved in corruption. Definitely, they would have to meet with government officials. That would create an electronic trail. Because you can't agree to meet somebody unless you have text messages, you use apps, dito tayo magkikita. There are CCTV footages around. There are ways that the cell phones can be geographically located to see if you were actually in that location. And this is something that's already routine in other countries, especially when it comes to corruption cases. Because corruption cases, to me, should have the priority in terms of investigation, prosecution, and punishment. People's money is involved. Why aren't we using all available resources to root that out and hold people accountable?
Is this going to be a good start? A restart, sir?
This is a great opportunity because given the situation where you have flood control projects that in fact were ghost projects, people were involved. This was not just a one-man operation. And for a group to be involved in this, there have to be communications. Sigurado yan. So why not begin this investigation? In fact, if there were to be an independent commission, which I believe is really something that we need, I would look into that immediately. I would make sure that all documents are preserved, nothing will get destroyed, and even electronic evidence would be preserved as well.
Congressman, do you think the president is taking his time in forming this independent commission? Because if you're saying timing is of the essence here, this should be done at the earliest possible time.
The sooner, the better.
Sooner the better. All right. So, bukas po, marami kayong gustong itanong sa Discaya couple. There were other issues there. Katulad po yung district engineer, assistant district engineer. I'm not sure if you were able to see that. Yun po, yung lumalabas na mga sasakyan, mga relo, mga pagkasino, etc., hundreds of millions. And yet you still have all the other contractors there. Here's one thing that was, well, maybe expected, that every other contractor that was asked if they participated in any corruption with any politician, each and every one of them said no. Kung baga yung Discaya family lang, mag-asawa lang pong umamin. Pero lahat nung po tinanong, isa-isa po sila, sabi po, no. What gives, sir? I mean, one contractor says, namimigay kami, and then the others say, wala kaming ginagawang ganun.
I think that's to be expected. Normal defensive reaction is to deny. And with my experience as a lawyer, I've been trying cases for 3 decades. Normal talaga yon. But there are, I think, techniques and methods that government authorities can employ to persuade people to be more forthcoming. And those are techniques that all our authorities they know about it. They can do that.
There was also certain parts during the testimony of the Discaya couple where they were saying that basically napilitan po sila. Dahil kung hindi po sila magbigay, I mean, this is just really rephrasing what they were saying, is that hindi sila magkakanegosyo, mahihirapan sila or papatayin yung kanilang yung mga kontrata. So in a way, they were saying that they had to shell out. In fact, there was a point that they were saying that minsan lugi sila, minsan sobrang liit lang ng kita nila, or make it between 3 to 5%. Would you be able to? Is that questionable? I guess that's my query to you. Is it questionable if they say that maliit na lang ang kinikita nila at minsan lugi, kaya po sila sumasama sa maraming mga kontrata dahil sa kakabigay po nila allegedly sa mga politiko, and yet you have supposed to be this lavish lifestyle?
That's precisely the question. And I think we should never lose our common sense when we are evaluating the statements of people and witnesses. For example, I was struck by what Henry Alcantara said when he testified at the first Infracom hearing. And he said, wala naman po akong kinalaman dyan eh. I just relied on my people. And again, we might, if you look at it in the abstract, you might say, oh yeah, maybe that's something that sounds reasonable. But to a lawyer like me who's been around for a long time, common sense, I don't think if you're dealing with that much money, that big a project, that you would just leave it to your people na wala kang alam. Of course, I'd rather not go deeper into that because I also have some questions for Mr. Alcantara.
Yeah. And maybe tomorrow, sir, because Bryce, the assistant supposed to be that took over his post, did not show up during your first hearing. So hopefully tomorrow ay magpunta po siya because he was grilled by the senators this today. All right, so let's talk about what will happen tomorrow and what to expect in the hearing of the House. It's called the Infra Committee. Hopefully you will have as many resource persons as invited in tomorrow's hearing, but we're going to take a very short break. We'll continue our discussion with Akbayan Party List Representative Chel Diokno when we return. Stay tuned, this is On Point. Welcome back, still with us, Akbayan Party List Representative Chel Diokno. So tomorrow is the second day of the hearing, and during the first hearing, dun po lumabas yung inyong suggestion. I believe that was your suggestion, sir, that everybody, all members of the committees, of the TRICOM, submit a full disclosure of any interests, whether directly or indirectly, that they may have to any flood control projects. Would that be correct, sir?
Yes, I actually made it a motion, and the motion was carried without objection. So I hope that tomorrow we can find out if all the members have submitted that disclosure. That disclosure actually is something required by the Constitution. The Constitution says that all members of the House and the Senate, upon assumption of office, must make that disclosure of all conflicts of interest. But unfortunately, if you look at the SALN form, it's not exactly provided there. And I think it's a good practice for all legislators before they embark on an investigation, especially one in aid of legislation, to disclose. Because that way, the public can be assured they're not there to protect themselves or any other interests. They're there to get to the bottom of what's happening.
Should there be an amendment to the SALN on what is written there so that any conflicts are already stated in your SALN? Is that what you're saying?
I think that would be a very good amendment. As far as I know, for example, in the U.S., when members of the Supreme Court of the United States, for example, have their own version of a SALN, they include the clients they represented when they were in practice and other possible conflicts of interest. So that when they're deciding cases, nobody can say, kasi naging kliyente mo yan, or something like that. And I think that in the interest of transparency, we have to restore the confidence of the people in these kinds of investigations. And that's one very good way to do it.
And to be clear about this, no government official, let's just say no member of Congress, can have any participation, tama ho ba, sir, directly or indirectly to any government contracts.
And that's also provided in the rules of the House.
It's
that
also there.
members of the committee cannot participate in deliberations and they cannot vote in any investigations where they have financial or business or pecuniary interest.
When they talk about divest, for example, Zaldico, the moment he supposed to be, he became congressman in 2022. I think prior to that, it was his brother. But then if somebody always says, if somebody rather says, but I already divested, is that enough, sir?
Well, the law does require divestment. Now, whether that is enough is really a question of how much influence did that person still have with the company? Kumita pa rin ba siya dahil dun sa kumpanya? Ginamit ba niya yung kanyang pwesto to ensure that contracts would go the way of the company that he used to belong to? These questions are still relevant because aside from the requirement of divestment, the Code of Conduct, Republic Act 6713, says you cannot have any conflicts of interest if you're in government. And it also requires that you act with honesty and integrity in all your dealings.
But if you divest, Congressman, and you divest to your wife or your brother or your son or your daughter, is that okay?
No. Republic Act 6713 speaks of divestment to someone other than
Family.
your family.
What if it's your cousin?
Siyempre, may lusot pa rin naman yan. Ano? Maybe you could divest to your BFF or somebody like that. That's why there still remains a question of investigation and disclosure. As long as it's known that you used to belong, for example, to a company, then that's enough for a start for enterprising media people and even people in government as well to start looking into this.
All right. So, tomorrow, sabi mo nga marami ka ding tanong sa Discaya couple, no? But the question, there's still that question mark, no? When will the TRICOM or the Infra Committee call on Congressman Zaldico? Especially now, whether fair or not. Of course, it's unfair for Congressman Zaldico that he was mentioned by the Discaya couple. I'm sure the Speaker will also say it's unfair that his name was mentioned by the Discaya couple. Kailan ho papatawag si Congressman Zaldico?
You know, if I were in the shoes of someone like Congressman Zaldico or anyone other congressman whose name was mentioned, I would be the first to appear. And if I want to clear my name, that's the best way to do it. Now, and that's one of the reasons also why there's really been a big push, especially among our people, for an independent investigation. Kasi nga naman, and this was raised by Congresswoman De Lima in the very start when the INFRACOM was created, that it's very hard to investigate yourself, especially now that you have already a lot of names coming out, whether there's basis or not, we don't know. The more, I think that more imperative that we have an independent commission that people can all say, okay, we can rest assured that these people are going to investigate this without fear or favor, and they will get at the truth.
What about all these other congressmen that legislators, rather, that the Discaya couple had mentioned? Madami po ito. There's about, I don't know, maybe 12 to 15. Congressman Romulo, Jojo Ang, Patrick Vargas, Arjo Taide, etc. No? Marcy Teodoro. Should the committee call on them just to explain or to get their side? Or were you saying that kung ako sila, magpresenta na lang sila?
Magpresenta sila at iharap nila yung salin nila, mag-waive sila ng bank secrecy. That's the best assurance to the people that I have nothing to hide.
That could be one, you're saying, good move to do for the congressmen that have been accused.
And not just for them, but also to restore the image of the institution itself, and to make people realize that, okay, I can be confident in the people who are in Congress.
Were you quite happy or content with the proceedings during the first day?
it was all right. At least, you know, I for the longest time, I've been at the receiving end of congressional investigations. I've been called as a resource person in so many different hearings, and I've always been tempted to ask questions. So the Infracom was an opportunity for me to, be on the other end and to ask questions. And I think that that's where someone who has the experience of going to court for a long time can do a lot in terms of ferreting out the truth.
There were some videos that came out of you asking Centerways President Lawrence Lubiano about his, well, not supposed, because he admitted it, donation to then Senate President Chis Escudero. And you were getting a lot of, I guess, good comments about the way you were asking the question like a true lawyer. It was not aggressive. I guess it wasn't rude. And you got out what you wanted to find out from him. Is there anything else that you would have wanted to find out from Mr. Lubiano? Kasi sa inyo po lumabas yung kapatid niya, mayor, hindi ho ba? At yung isa niyang kapamilya ay councilor din.
I was happy with the responses that he gave me. At the same time, they have provided a lot of leads. I've read a number of very good investigative pieces that have put this all together. And I'm happy about that because, as a legislator, I can only do so much in terms of questioning. Sometimes I look at, when I finish my round of questioning, and we only have such a limited period of time, you want to go back and ask some more. But if there are time constraints and also the number of members asking questions, you may not have that luxury. But I'm happy that, and in a way, looking forward to the opportunity to question again tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that you will be able to at least question each and every contractor that will be present in tomorrow's hearing? Kasi in a way, how I see it is that it's being focused on just a certain number of contractors. For example, the companies of the Discayas, their construction companies, wow. Pero ang dami pa ho eh. Top 15 po yan, I think even the number 1, hindi pa nga masyado natatanong. Where would you kind of like to focus on? Kasi parang, do you feel somehow that the investigation is too focused on personalities that maybe sometimes it becomes, you need to widen more the questioning to other construction companies and contractors?
Well, it's not just the contractors, it's a web. And I think that's where the amount of preparation and planning of how you question the witnesses will really come into play. A lot of this really involves strategy. And that's why it's very hard for me to talk about the kinds of questions I want to ask tomorrow.
All right. I was going to ask you this. What could come out? Kasi alam naman po natin in aid of legislation eh. With these kinds of investigation, rather hearings by both houses of Congress, what would be the good legislation that could come out of this?
There's a lot. For example, in terms of government transparency, in terms of making sure that especially infrastructure projects are really happening and that there are no more either ghost or substandard projects. I think we have to have legislation that makes it a more participatory process where people can access the status of projects, where they can submit what they see because they know firsthand. If I'm a resident of a place and I see may ginagawang flood control dito, pero bakit ganun pa rin ang baha? And they can document as well. That, I think, is really going to provide a bigger check. As well, I think we have to have a more proactive government response when complaints are made that will really listen and take action on what people are saying. It's about time that we put a stop to this type of corruption. For me, the worst type of corruption are corruption that involves the lives of everyday people. Corruption in education, social services, in flood control, because everyone is affected by that. Go to work and you can't go to work because there's a flood. You
You can't go to school.
Exactly. Everything gets disrupted. And why? Because of the greed of a few people who are working in connivance with government officials. That's terrible. That has to stop.
And the loss of lives, sir.
Yes.
Just a quick question before you go, because this is new development on the ICC, which I'm just hearing. I just actually read it a while ago before we went on air. So basically, Congressman, the ICC pretrial chamber has postponed former President Rodrigo Duterte's confirmation of charges, which was set for September 23. That's supposed to be 2 weeks from now. Apparently, it follows a request from the defense team for indefinite adjournment because he is allegedly unfit to stand trial. That's all we can share right now. Just any thoughts on this?
Well, that's a very general statement. When you say that an accused is unfit to stand trial, it could mean either physically, he is unable to, maybe perhaps due to certain sicknesses, or it could also mean that he is not emotionally or mentally able to stand trial. We have to know more. I think it's incumbent upon us to find out more. I do hope that we can proceed with that. A lot of people are looking forward to the presentation of evidence, and I hope that that doesn't get too delayed.
Akbayan Party List Representative Chel Diokno, pleasure to have you. Thank you so much for your time. We'll be watching tomorrow, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's On Point. Join us again tomorrow, 7:30 p.m. here on BNC, the Billionario News Channel. I'm Pinky Webb. Thank you for watching.